Pat McGovern, very welcome here. My first question is really all about what started IDG once upon a time. What were your drivers then?
Yes, well, I had studied computers when I went to MIT. I actually built a computer when I was in high school and won a science fair award, and MIT Alumni Association came and said, you know, you should get more serious, and they gave me a nice full scholarship to go to MIT. And then I realized that computers were a way to enhance the power of the brain. We're going to give much more memory available to people, and then you could get insights into what that data meant by the processing power of computers. So I said, you know, the most critical thing that separates us from all other living beings is the human mind, our intellectual capability, and computers were going to be amplifiers of that. So I thought this is, you know, some technology that will probably be the most important in human life. But before people can achieve something, they must conceive the possibility, and information is the seed of that conception. So I thought
So very early on, you saw the enormous opportunity.
Yeah, the enormous potential that, you know, I thought computers could, you know, help 1 billion people in the world by 2020. And the people thought I was crazy because at that time computers cost, you know, $15 million and took squash court sized rooms. And, but I thought, you know, if you looked at if you increase the power every 18 months, you know, then you'd have a multiplication of, you know, some 35 times over the course of just 30 years. So,
yeah. So you were fascinated with this new technology and you worked with it hands-on. Why didn't you continue in science?
Well, because I thought that before this could benefit mankind, people would have to understand its potential and get excited about it. So I thought, you know, providing the information about where this technology was going and how it was becoming available and how to use it, you know, would advance the technology's benefit to mankind much more quickly than otherwise. So I thought I should take the role of
Was that a
being
completely altruistic decision?
Well, I always enjoyed communicating. You know, I was the editor of a high school newspaper and the college newspaper, so I had a little bit of a journalism in my blood. And
yeah.
in 1958, the first computer magazine started and was located not too far from MIT. So they put a notice on the bulletin board saying a technical editor wanted. I applied, I got the job. So when I was 19 years old, I became technical editor of the first computer magazine. And I just loved it because you could call people up, you know, the most important and famous people, and say, I'm an editor of a magazine, I'd like to ask you questions. And I'd say, of course, you know, what do you want to know? And I said, I'd never be able to reach these people. You know, I say, I'm a student at MIT and I'd like to ask you questions. It's like their secretary would cut me off right away. But as an editor, I could get access to these fascinating people. So I think that's where he got me excited about being in the media business and creating and distributing information.
But early days, early on, you saw yourself as a journalist rather than an entrepreneur.
Well, yeah, I saw myself as creating publications. You know, I knew I'd have to make a business out of running these publications, but my main motivation was the desire to communicate, to give this information to people that could increase their productivity and standards of living and quality of life. So it was a sort of mission-driven goal, and to get to that mission, you know, I had to.
Do you remember a special point where you decided, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to build a company?
Well, I was being the editor of this publication, and I would go around and meet the heads of the computer industry. And then one day I was meeting a head of Univac, which is the second largest computer company, and you know, I was asking what his key problems were, and he said, well, his key problem is that he only has 10% of the market, and he only has a small visibility because his sales force only lets him know a small part of the market, and he needs to know the whole market to make plans for new products. And so I said I could do a survey, and I knew there were about 10,000 places where computers were. I could contact them, send them questionnaires, you know, decide where they are, where they're using the computer and the applications and benefits, and I put this together as a database. And he said, oh, that would be great. You know, this would be a huge help for us in investing in R&D and making better products. And he said, how much would that be? And I said, well, 10,000 computers, you know, this is 1964, it's maybe $40,000. He said, oh, no, Pat, that's not acceptable. And I thought, well, he probably means he wants a discount, you know, so I thought I could maybe get some high school students to help code the data. And I said, maybe 35,000. He said, you don't understand, Pat, no one would use data that's so cheap as you're proposing to provide it. If you make it $80,000, then people will take it seriously and will get a lot of use and a lot of application and benefit. And I said, you mean the higher the price, the more the perceived value? He said, yes, because information is an intangible. And so the measurement of quality is partially by the price that it is able to justify in the market. So I said, I love that business model. And so I went back, I called the head of the magazine, said, would you like to do this research project? And he said, no, I'm not interested. You do it yourself. So I just mailed out this proposal to do the research. And to my amazement, I got about 8 companies sending me 50% prepayment on it. So the first company at IDG was actually International Data Corporation, a market research company, which is now the world's largest information technology market research company.
And then you started in publishing right after that? Or?
Yeah, well, one of our research projects 3 years into our market research business was to interview the heads of the computer centers and find out what they wanted. And they all said that they were getting a lot of information from the manufacturers selling them products and services, but they wanted to know what their other colleagues were doing, what's happening at other sites. And they said that we'd like to get that immediate, as quickly as possible, like every week. And so we said, would you pay for that if we did that, like a weekly newspaper on what's happening in the computer user community? He said, of course we'd pay for that, because we want honest, truthful information, and we don't want propaganda from the manufacturers. So
okay, and then you, when did the name IDG, the International Data Group?
Yeah.
When did that occur?
Well, I think we came out about 1972. We'd started CW Communications as our publishing group, and then we had IDC and CW, and people said that we have to have some name that unifies the two because they're all part of the same company. So then we took International Data and changed the name corporation into group so we could have multiple activities.
In 1972, was there any truth to that international, or was it just?
No. In 1969, we started our research business in Europe. In 1970, we launched a publication in the UK. In 72, we launched in Germany. In 73, in France, etc.
When did you come up with the idea of building an international company, or was that something you had with you all along?
I think it was a concept that we had all along, because we felt the beneficiaries of computers were going to be all around the world, and we had the choice of either doing multiple subjects in our own country, and everyone told us publishing is a culturally related national business. So when you do your computer publication, you do a medical publication, you do a construction publication, but stick to your own country.
But your reasoning is purely logical. But it also takes some guts, doesn't it, and some imagination to think globally when you're in your late 20s, or
right? They said there were no good examples of companies that would go over and could launch magazines in many other countries. So they said you should stick to the U.S. or maybe U.S. and English. You could do Canada, do Australia, do U.K., but you can't do French publications, Chinese publications, German, etc. But we thought, why not? We realized, though, that the key was to always hire 100% local people who knew the culture and knew the means of preparing and distributing the information.
And then you built a company based on values.
Yeah, we had 10 corporate values, which, one was our mission of sticking to information services about information technology, and then investing in our people through training and giving them a lot of opportunity to grow and develop, and always having highest quality and most useful, and constantly changing with the market. So we realized we were in a fast-growing, dynamic field, and we had to, really continue to interact.
When did you come up with these values? Or did you have to sit down and formulate them and then build the group, or was it
I would say they probably evolved over maybe the first 10 years of experiencing what works and what doesn't work, what makes successful companies continue to be successful and not have flame out after one good product or service. So it probably was maybe 1974, 10 years after we started, and I actually came down with the tablet from the mountain saying, here are our 10 corporate values, and now every company in the 90 countries where we operate, has the 10 corporate values on a plaque in their reception room. And I think it's actually made a huge difference that anywhere I go around the world, I find people associating with the same goals and values and styles.
My last question in this part is, we have operations in like 90 countries. You mentioned 45 fully owned subsidiaries. How does Sweden stick out in this group?
No, Sweden is really an outstanding, outstanding example. We started here, in 1983, launching Computer Sweden, and we've grown extremely rapidly, growing at about 15 or 20% a year. And now, actually, Sweden, if we look at the revenue per capita, because of the intelligence of the Swedish people and their interest in computers and communications and engineering, we have the highest revenue per capita in Sweden of any of our countries. So I always tell people, if you follow the model of Sweden, then you'll be successful, because
if everybody in the world drank as much Coca-Cola as they do in Florida.
That's right, the same thing. I think we figured out we'd be a $25 billion a year company if we had the same ratio of revenue per capita that we have in Sweden. But we've always, Sweden also has been one of our most creative companies, because they've been willing to try many new things. So they launching some of our first mobile information service publications. They're launching publications in biotech and launching publications on a clean air and water environment. So they've been willing. One of our core values is let's try it. And nobody has been as good as let's try it as Sweden, because they've tested many, many products, and then they're very quick to recognize this one works, we'll give it full development, and this one, we thought it would work, but no one's interested, so after a month or two they will stop and reinvest in something else.
Okay, so Sweden would be a bit of a role model for...
Very much so, yeah. No, I think if people wanted to see how a really great IDG company operates, they could come to Sweden and see that. Particularly if they're, from a country where there are 10 or 12 million people, and they want to know how to operate effectively in that size country.
Okay. Pat McGovern, thanks very much.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.